Hey guys, this is Heather Martin from Heather Ean Art. I had a couple of questions from a bunch of people about my process and the materials that I use, so I thought I would go over in a video about the types of paints that I use and my palette. So you can see my palette. This is Mijello. This is an 18 well version. You can see I go from my yellows to earth tones, blues, and then greens. And I usually have a white strip at the top so that I can always get a pure white, or at least close to pure white. And it usually comes with a plastic insert, but I tend to lose them. So I don't really keep them in the palette, but they are nice to have, especially if you want a easier cleaning, just like take it out and rinse it out. They also make a larger version. They make a couple of versions now, I think. This is the larger version. I'm not sure how many wells are in here, but there's way too many for me. I know Nathan Fowkes uses this palette, and he tends to double up on the colors that often get dirty, like the lemon yellows, or just most of the yellows tend to get pretty dirty, and I don't really think that's necessary. I've never had a problem with it, so I just don't use that palette very often. I have a paint bag, which is full of my paints, and always has a spray bottle. I have these spray bottles everywhere. They come in like 6 or 8 packs on Amazon, so I just put them all over the house, so I don't really have any reason to have a dry palette. And anyone that knows me knows that I'm kind of crazy about keeping my palette wet, and I'm always yelling at people, telling them to spray down their palette, because you want the paint to have a nice pancake batter consistency. And in order to do that, you just need to constantly spray it so it doesn't get crusty. All right, so in this bag, I have them all separated out in little Ziploc snack bags. I do this because it's easier to find a color when you're in a hurry. I keep my blues separated, reds, and earth tones and greens all separated. And it's really nice. I used to just separate it into cools and warms, but I find the more you organize it, the easier it is to find things. And right now, most of my whites are all near the end of their life. You can see, like, I try to get every bit out of them. So I need to go shopping. But I put a couple of these whites in here that have a little bit of life left, and I'll be using that until I get more. All right. Let me go over my paint colors with you. So for the yellows, I mostly use a cadmium lemon for my brightest yellow. There's also just a lemon yellow, which I think is cheaper. I don't really care which one I use. And there's a permanent yellow deep or a cadmium yellow deep. It's almost an orange yellow. It's really dark. And then I have a cadmium orange that I rarely use because it's really potent and it leaks all over my palette and it gets into everything, so I try to use it sparingly. And when I do use it, I just clean it up immediately. And here are my reds. I always have a cadmium red around, and an alizarin crimson. The alizarin crimson is a nice cool red, but it does dry up really fast and has a tendency to get really crusty and crumbly fast. So try not to put too much of this in one time, or you will waste paint. I carry around an opera rose for the really bright pink flowers that I just can't get with the alizarin crimson. And It also makes a nice orange if you mix it with the lemon yellow. Here's a brilliant violet, which I rarely use, but it's also good for having the purple flowers that you just can't get a nice purple with the alizarin crimson or cadmium red. So keep those together. I keep all of my earth tones in one bag. It seems like there's a lot in here, but some of them are doubles because they're also at the end of their lives. Here's yellow ochre, which I often use to tone my canvases too. It has a nice muted yellow color. And then I also do that with burnt sienna. It's a kind of an orangey brown. And I have burnt umber. Burnt umber is another color that constantly dries up really fast and gets crumbly. So I don't use that. I don't put a lot of it in my palette at once. But if you do mix it with a nice Prussian blue and alizarin crimson, you can get basically a black. And I try not to use my black often because I like to always have some element of color in there. So I use burnt umber a lot. For my greens, green is a hard color to get. So I have these around, but I always make sure to mix them with something so it's not just a pure tube color. Here's Linden Green. You can also use a leaf green from Holbein, but I find them to be pretty similar. It's really good to get the color of green that you can get with the sunlight coming through leaves, and I use that one a lot. Here is sap green. It's a really good kind of grass green and tree leaf green. Make sure to mix it in with a little bit of red to tone it down. Here's Windsor green, which is a really cool dark green. You can also use deep permanent green, I think. I'm not really too picky. I use whatever color I think looks good. For my blues, I use ultramarine blue, probably the most of any color. And I have several brands. I'm not too picky because I just blow through this color. But I would say I use that the most. I also have Phthalo Blue, which is more of a yellowish, greenish blue. I really like it. It makes sky colors really good. And here's a Prussian blue, which is a really dark, dark blue. And it also tends to be more greenish, I think. So it's good, like I said, if you mix it with burnt umber and alizarin crimson to get a nice dark, near black. For my whites, I like permanent white. It tends to be more opaque, and I have zinc white too, but it just isn't as strong as I want it to be. I imagine that zinc white is good for mixing colors that you don't want to turn too pasty, but I don't bother using two whites. For my blacks, I use ivory black. There's not really a reason. You can use lamp black, which I think tends to be warmer. But ivory black is good if you want to do a limited palette. I think it churns more blue. So that's about it. I'll try to do another video about my brushes and maybe the papers next week, but I hope you guys learned something. Let me know if you have any more questions, and I hope to answer them. Thanks for watching.